against the window, and she's looking at this guy in this box. And I realized she'd never seen a TV before. So she was trying to figure out what was going on. So I told her parents. I mean, it was a great story. But I just saw the whole expression of her face and get lit on this TV and this guy, and just the whole stunning thing of a 5-year-old trying to figure out what is going on inside that house. So Bill and I were walking around, and we're crossing the street that day. And Bill goes, "Did you see that?" And I go, "No, I didn't see it. I didn't see it." You know. He goes, "I think that gal just jumped out of the window and committed suicide." You know, and we're like looking up. You know, not on the sidewalk behind a car. There were cars parked there, so you can really see the body. And I look up, and about the 4th floor, there's an open window up there. And, you know, you don't want to think anybody's committing suicide, so you think, well, I wonder if they fell out or what, you know, I don't know. And so, you know, anyway, we walk over there, and there's this gal laying on the sidewalk, blonde hair, head split wide open, blood everywhere, she was dead. So, we don't know if she fell or jumped, but I think it might have been a suicide. So, later on that day, I found kind of another one of those. It wasn't a coffee cart, but it was a little place where they sell drinks and stuff, you know, that you could walk up to. And so, and people are speaking English, and so this guy orders one. Remember back in Istanbul, I had the one with the green top? Well, I didn't know it was pickled. I didn't know it was pickled back then. I just thought it was rotten milk. So in Austria, or later on in Austria, up in the Netherlands, I hear this guy order this pickled milk, and they brought the bottle up. It had that green cap on it. I go, that's what that was. It was pickled milk. I didn't know that back then. I just thought it was rotten because that's what it tasted like. So anyway, learned about that. So we got on the ferry, and in I think Brussels, and it's about a 6-hour ride over to across the English Channel on this ferry. So, you know, it carries cars and buses and all kinds of stuff. And we get to Dover, and so you see the cliffs of Dover, and then you understand the World War II thing when they talk about the cliffs of Dover, these big white cliffs or just walls and stuff. And so the aviators coming back across the ocean would see those probably from quite a distance, with the light reflecting off of them, and think, oh, England, they're home, you know, they made it on that mission. And one of the interesting things that happened, because you never know, there's how God's protecting you. There was a guy in Germany that had bought this hand-carved cane. Had lions' heads on it and all kinds of animals. It was about that long, about that big around cane. Pretty nice. And so nobody claimed it. He'd gotten off the bus and left it on the bus, and that was back in Germany. So I kind of claimed it. And so I went, hey, is this anybody's? No, it's that guy. No, it's yours now. Okay, fine. So I hung it up right in front of me on the bus. And so we get into customs, and you know, we didn't have a lot of money with us at that time. I probably had $50 or $60. You know, I cleaned up, combed my hair. I had this leather jacket on that was, you know, priceless by today's standards, and so we're going through customs, and so we had gotten some information from this John Lott back in Australia that his parents lived in England. So we had their address, and we had their information and their phone number, and the idea was when we got to England, we would call them and maybe stay with them a couple of days. So checking into customs, and passport and all this kind of stuff. Oh, why are you coming to England? I'm just a tourist, how many days you going to be here? I don't know, probably a week or something. And we didn't even know how we were getting home. We're in Europe with $50. And the guy goes, well, how much money do you have with you? And I said, well, $50. He goes, well, that's not enough to come into the country. And I'm like, well, I think I got some money waiting for me at American Express, and American Express. They had American Express, like American Express traveler's checks, but they also had offices all over the world, and a lot of people would use them as like a post office. Like you could write a letter to me in Paris in care of the American Express, and I could go in there and pick it up. And so, or London, or a lot of places. So I said, well, I think I've got some money waiting for me at American Express. And he goes, well, it's not a fair, I don't know what happened. It's like you all of a sudden, it's like, I go, he's not going to let me in the country. And so I said, well, we've got these people that can vouch for us, and and so I said, here's their names and phone number. This is who we're going to visit. We've got somebody to stay with and all this kind of stuff. And so to my knowledge, Bill was getting through. Nobody seemed to bother him, but they were bothering me. And so anyway, they pull us off the bus, and they go, well, we're not going to let you come in the country. So, and if they don't let you come in the country, what that means is they're deporting you. So they got me, and evidently Bill said, well, I better go with you, we're traveling together. So they literally pulled us off the bus, put us in jail for the next ferry back to Belgium across the English Channel. And the law is, if a country deports you, they have to deport you back to the place you left to come there. So we're getting deported back to Belgium. Never figured that out for a long time. So we're, and they fed us, and they were nice, and we ate beans and wieners and stuff in the prison, and Bill's got his guitar. I got pictures of us in there, and so, here we are in jail and in England. I don't think I ever told my mom and dad that. But anyway, so we get deported back to Belgium. And so years later, after I got home, I was thinking about that, and I go, what was up with that? And what I came up with was, and I don't know if it's true or not, but there's a lot of drugs over there, a lot of hash, coming up through Europe, and it wouldn't surprise me if the 8 days we were in Afghanistan having the motor replaced in the bus, they were probably pulling the motor out and the transmission and filling that stuff full of hash. I have no idea. Nobody on the bus would have known but the driver, but it wouldn't surprise me. And so when I had my stuff with me, when I went into customs in England, I carried my stuff in there, and I left that cane in the bus. So we never went back to the bus. We just got thrown in jail, and I think we spent the night in there or something. The next day they put us on a ferry back to Belgium. And I often wondered, I wonder if there wasn't some kind of drugs in that cane, and God knew that, because we didn't. And if I'd have gone into England, I might have gone through customs and had that cane, and they might have found drugs in there, and I could have gone to prison. But don't know, we'll never know. But that's what happened. So we get back to Belgium, and we decide we're going to go to Paris. So we get on a train, and we're going to Paris, and the first half of the ride was pretty good. We found this kind of room that had a bench on each side that would like maybe sit 4 people on each side facing each other, and then there was a sliding door that went to the hall on the train car. So the first half of the trip was great. There was nobody in there. Bill and I laid down, we fell asleep, we were sleeping, you know, and all of a sudden we pulled into the station and woke up, the door opens up, and like 6 people come jamming into this room. So we're all just sitting there, like, all of a sudden it's like the middle of the night, you know, and it's like all of a sudden there's like 8 people in there, and we're just like this, and trying to go to sleep, and there's this guy and this gal, one gal and a guy, sitting across from each other, and they start talking in French, and they're talking, they never quit talking, and it's like, I mean, the joke was we knew French by the time we get pulled into the station in France, Paris. We knew French. We'd been listening to it all night. Drove us crazy. It's like, I don't know, just people are the same all over the world. Some people just wouldn't quit talking. Anyway, so we didn't get any more sleep that night. I get into Paris. You know, same thing, you're kind of lost. And we're looking for youth hostel. And so Paris was the first place that we ever got into subways in our life, because they don't have subways on the west coast of the United States. They've got BART down in the Bay Area, but we'd never been on it. And so they had a subway system, and it was kind of almost like half new and half old. It was like the old part, I mean, literally looked like World War II. I mean, the old engine with the steel wheels and just like a train kind of thing. And, you know, and this is all underground, under the city, in tunnels and stuff. And then the newer part was like concrete with rubber tire things and stuff like that. So anyway, couldn't speak French, but you'd count and color and whatever. We found our way to the youth hostel. So the youth hostel was a pretty good deal. You bought this card, you know, youth card, and you could stay there for like, I think it was like $1.60 a night or something. So we stayed there for, I don't know, several days, and so and we met some cool guys, a couple guys from the United States. You get into a lot more Americans, you know, kids coming over for the summer and stuff like that. And so these 2 guys had gone to England, bought 750 Norton motorcycles, and they were going to ride them through Europe and stuff. And talked to another guy, says, "Oh man, you haven't lived until you've been through the Swiss Alps on a motorcycle." And we never got to do that, but looks like fun. And just met a lot of nice people, kids, you know. Found out that, you know, from about 2 o'clock to about 5 o'clock, everything shuts down. You know, they just have like a big lunch. All the mom and pop shops just shut down. So if you want to have lunch, if you want to get your cheese and bread and wine and whatever you're doing, you better do it before 2 o'clock, or you're not going to be getting anything until like 5:30 or 6. So we figured that out the hard way a couple of times, and so one time we decided to, we didn't want to pay $1.60 a night, so we snuck into one of the dorms and that was empty, and we just slept underneath the bed on the floor, on the concrete floor. About the middle of the night, guy walks in. You know, they bust us, they kind of kick us out of the thing. They take our, you know, youth hostel cards and said, "Well, you can pick these up in the morning when you pay." It's like, okay. And so we go in the morning, we go in there, you know, we felt pretty bad about it. And so the guy, we're a little slow. The guy behind the counter, he goes, "Yeah," I go, "Yeah, we're the 2 guys here to pick up our youth cards and stuff." He goes, "Oh yeah, okay." And so he comes up and he puts the cards in front of us, and he gets up and leaves. So we're standing there waiting for him to come back to pay the $1.60, and we finally figure out, oh, he's not going to make us pay. They just figured, well, if you're going to do that, we'll just let you have it for free. So we picked up our cards, and we had our cards, and so we had talked to a couple of guys on these Norton motorcycles, and they said, well, in London, if you're going to London, and we didn't think we were, there is we ran into some kids over there that have an apartment, and they kind of open it up once in a while to just let people travel through there and spend the night for free. That's just what they were doing. So I thought, that's interesting. So, we decided, well, hey, why not? We're here. Why not try to go back to London? We got a place we're going to stay. And so we got a lock, and we put all of our stuff in a locker at that youth hostel in Paris and locked it with a combination lock. And we went down to the train station, got on a train, and went up to France and got a ferry across the English Channel to Dover. And they let us in, and I'm telling you, I had this jumpsuit on with my toothbrush and some toothpaste and my ID and stuff. That's all I had. We're just going to go out there for like a couple days. So we get into London, of course, at night, in the middle of the night. You're always getting into places in the middle of the night. And so there was the second place we ran into a subway, and they call it the Underground. Now, in London, the Underground subway was a bit more modern than the one in Paris. So it's like we're kind of moving into the 1970s, but modern trains, underground, and you go way down these stairs. I mean, it seemed like, you're probably not going down 30 floors, but it seems like you're going down, because some of those train tunnels go under rivers and stuff. So we finally end up outside this door of this place. We find the address, probably 2 o'clock in the morning. And so the neighbor next there is coming home. It's kind of cold out. And that would have been London in about June. 70 in London is like a heat wave. In fact, it was late when we were there. It was a heat wave. It was 70 during the day. And so the neighbor was coming home, and he had this coat, and he gave me this coat. He goes, hey, you guys got a coat? And I go, no, I don't have a coat. We're just kind of traveling light. And so we knocked on the door a few times, and somebody finally answered the door, and they let us in, and we kind of explained the thing to them about, well, we met these two guys, and they had motorcycles, and they told us about this place. Oh, yeah, come on in, And so we just kind of crashed on the floor, and we spent probably 3 or 4 days there, and played hearts a lot, cards, and people there were nice, and went down to you call it a store, but it just looked like a building that was like a little store, not a big supermarket. And so I went in there. I was grocery shopping or something for these. There was gals and guys staying there, and so I was going to go get some food or something. So I go into this store, and I go, yeah, I need a couple cans of this and a can of that and stuff. And I'm just talking like an American. And so the guy was English, and he was very proper. So he kind of gave me this lesson on how to speak proper English. So it's like he goes through every word I didn't use right, and was telling me that, it's not a can over here, it's a tin. Okay, and so you call it a tin, not a can. It's a tin can. America, we just dropped the tin and went with the can. Over there, it's like, it's a tin. I don't even go tin can. It's like, it's a tin. So anyway, a bunch of stuff like that. It was cute. It was fun. Another time we went down to the park. Remember I said it was 70, a heat wave? And one of these guys had a Frisbee. Well, nobody in England had seen a Frisbee, and so we're down there in the park throwing Frisbees, and there's all these old guys, you know, with raincoats on and umbrellas and these hats that they wear in England and stuff, watching us throw this Frisbee around. And, you know, if you've never seen a Frisbee, they're like, what, you know, doing all kinds of stuff, and they're like, they can't believe it. They're just watching us like for hours throw this thing. So that was kind of fun. And so we end up going to go back to Paris. And I think one of the stories that happened in Paris before we went to London was we didn't know how we were getting home. But it was pretty expensive to fly. Like even to New York City, it was like $700 or something each to fly. And so, you know, it is what it is. There was a kid. We ran into a guy at the youth hostel. He goes, hey, you want to buy a UCLA student body card for $5? He goes, it's signed by the dean and it's got the stamp on it. And it's a student body card for UCLA. And it's like, for $5? I go, well, why would I want to do that? He goes, well, if you take this thing down to this place, you can buy an airline ticket from Paris to New York City for $100. And it's like, you know it's a scam, right? And God works in mysterious ways, you know. He's not a Republican or Democrat, so, you know, so we bought these cards. You know, we go down there and it's like, oh, we're going to get so busted. We're like going to be so busted. So we walk into this like office and we go, yeah, we'd like to get a voucher to fly back to the United States on this charter flight. So, oh, are you guys students? Student body cards. Oh. I'm thinking, she doesn't ask me any questions. So like, I don't know anything about UCLA. It's in LA, I guess. So anyway, yeah, she's gone for about 10 minutes, and she comes back with this stuff and all this kind of stuff, and so it's a thing, and our voucher for these tickets, and it was going to be leaving like in a couple weeks, and so we went back, probably went to the airport and got our tickets, and then that's when we decided, let's go to London for a couple of days. We got a couple more weeks to kill, and so we're up in London and we're coming back, and they had pictures of the Channel, what they called the Channel back in the 71, and that was where they had this tunnel that went underneath the English Channel, and trains went that way, okay, non-stop. And so the hot thing was they had the ferries, of course, that had been going for a long time, but the hovercraft. They had this big hovercraft which you could put about 60 cars on and 100 and some people, and it was this big raft, and it had these big propellers on it, and it kind of blew up, and it would skim across the water with these propellers and stuff. And instead of 6 hours across there by ferry, it was about 75 minutes. That's about an hour and 15 minutes. And so we get on this thing. We take a train down by Dover. We get on there. We go through this thing. We get on the hovercraft, and we go across. And I remember sitting there at a window seat. I'm just sitting out there, and all of a sudden I see this thing out there. It's like land, and I go, what in the world is that doing out there? Because I'm thinking we're halfway across. And I was like, how could that be out in the middle of the English Channel? It's like, we're already in France. We're coming into the harbor of France already. It's like, wow, that's crazy fast. So then you get on it, from there you get on a train, and they take you to Paris. So we pull into the Paris train station, and it's like, all of a sudden, it's like first time since we've left home that we know where we're going. That's the first time we've ever come into a place where we've been here before. And so we knew right what subway to get on, just didn't even have to look. Just boom, go down here, go down there, go down there, right to the youth hostel. So that was pretty cool. And so another time we were in Paris, we went down to